Good evening, everyone. This is a recap lecture from our session that we had with Mark Baragal, and I'm going to go in a little more detail. I know Mark hit several key databases and introduced you to library services and business resources that are there. And what I'd like to do is go in a little more detail. I'd like to talk about Get Smart Fast as we talk about industry, product and customer levels and various databases that will help you in your research. Because secondary research is important for a few reasons. One, you need to use secondary research for your upcoming presentation in terms of real startup, because you need to understand what your competitors are doing, where the gaps are. Two is for market modeling, to know in terms of market size. Others would say that you need it for a SWOT analysis, which I totally agree. And fourthly is that you're going to need to have background so that when you are developing your interview guides, you really have eliminated some unnecessary questions, but also given you some depth that make your interviews with your interviewees really meaningful. Okay, so there's a few whys. I certainly hope that it'll help. So let's move forward and talk about it. So where do we start? Okay, here we are with Mark. He is the wizard. I tell you what, he is just like you got to know him. Here's his contact information, and he's going to help us with the databases. So one of the expectations that I do have is that you will get with him before you do your presentation next week. All right, so what is at your fingertips at Kennedy? So we're going to run through this a little bit. Now, I have put on PolyLearn. This is a cheat sheet that I use with the marketing management class at the MBA level. I feel like you all should not be shorted and should have that same detail. I know Mark has given you the two-pager, which is really much more at the surface, but I've tried to cull a variety of resources both here at Cal Poly, but also through the Kelley School of Business, so that you have tools and you have links so that you really can work with those tools and become adept at using those tools, because that is a competitive advantage as you gather data, because the more data you have, the better decisions you can make, and the more knowledgeable you are, the more confident you will be with your investors, and the more confident your investors will be in you. So here we are, Kennedy Library Portal. So you will come to the portal, okay, and you will see a variety of things. What I do want to point out is under your research, you will see multiple databases. So I think that that's very important. Here we've created and put out the hyperlink to Kennedy Library. But what we want to drill down is to the databases and to the research guides, because that's by area. Okay? And so you also can use for broad brush searches through the Cal State University system, the OneSearch portal, which I find is useful if I'm just looking for just a very, very broad look at things. But if I want to drill down, databases and the top 10, and I have here for marketing, which I feel like a lot of the databases that are available for marketing are also applicable to entrepreneurship. Okay, so we're at the OneSearch portal, which is the CSU databases, and this OneSearch again allows you to go broad in terms of things. So I would encourage you to use that. I do encourage the getting down to more specific areas. So when searching, use the advanced search and hone on with filters. And this is important. It's sort of like if you look at Google, Google does allow you to go into, and if you notice here in the upper left-hand side, we have the ability to incorporate what we call Boolean logic, which is and or, and to create multiple filters to allow you to get more specific, because if you just put in there like storage systems, you can get a lot of different things, as Google does as well, and sometimes they're not relevant because they don't understand what you're really trying to get at. Okay, So this approach for OneSearch and various databases such as is important, especially like if you look at ABI Inform, which Mark shared. So my take home is you need to do research and you need to get specific. And I talk this because I do it myself. Okay. So this is Business Top 10. So become familiar with this collection. Marketing, you see, is there as with a mix of other disciplines. Entrepreneurship, really Mark has customized a lot of the different pieces of the collection to entrepreneurship, but I find that there's a parallel. So as you can see on the bottom, we have breadcrumbs in terms of how to be able to get there. So be comfortable, play with it, get to where you're very adept at getting to where you need to go in the database and the specific tool that you wish to use. So here's examples of the marketing database, and as you can see, there's a few of them that Mark had touched on, like ABI Inform. Statistic was another one as well, but I like marketresearch.com. I think they have some great secondary market research reports that are there. But we're going to drill down a little bit on this. Again, you can see on the bottom that we have put the breadcrumbs as well as the link to those sources. So also for the upcoming presentation, you might find competitive intelligence databases useful. Okay, and so here are the top 14 competitive intelligence databases and the breadcrumbs that will allow you to get there. So you say, all right, I got these different databases. Wow, there's a lot of stuff here. I'm like gonna go, this is overwhelming. Okay, I need a latte here to get my head together. Okay, well, I'm a big strategy person, which means have a rationale, have an approach to go at what you need to get done. Okay, so this is the how. All right, and so you need to have a strategy, and I think we have a unique strategy, and we call it Get Smart Fast. Okay, so you need to ask the right questions. Okay, thank you, Mark, for your input here. You have always given us great feedback, and Mark has been integral to this. That's why I call him the wizard. So what are some of our key questions that we need to consider? All right, so what are those questions? What do you want to find? All right, specific in priority order. Where do you think you will find it? And who cares to collect it? Okay, store it. Make it available for free or for fee, because some people will collect it and will sell it. Guess what? Google does that too. 3, how are you going to use it? Okay, and this is what we look at for your presentation coming up. We see that we have a competitive intelligence type of exercises here. And who cares about the data that you're seeking? So you have to think about your audiences there. Well, in this case, you're probably wanting to present it to me and your classmates, because we're going to look at what you're doing research around your business. But if you have a startup, it may be your investors. It may be your board members. It may be your advisors. So I think it's important that you ask these questions. So it helps you define your strategy. So second is you need to identify what the right information is in the right database or the right store. Okay? So again, we're going to get smart fast. So what we have to look at is from broad to specific, which means you start at the industry level, you drill to the company level, product, and then customer. So what I've done is I've tried to organize at least so you start thinking about things at those levels. So for industry, it's first research, and I think Mark had shared that. And that's very, very useful database. As you get into the company level, Hoover's and Mergent Online, and I particularly like Hoover's. And, for first research, we're looking at, market size, competitors, how the industry works, and regulation. but you may pivot once you have enough of what happens in the industry into specific companies in your domain and looking at financial and competitors and news just to get an insight. And 10K, which are those reports, those financial reports that they have to do if they're a public company. Then we drill down into product and customer and product. There's Euromonitor, or the Global Market Information Database, which allow you to get at that product level, SWOT, demographics, trends and forecasts. I don't think we're fully at that point, but it's as you go further in your journey, you may need to have those that database in your toolbox. The marketresearch.com, which is customer, but I'll be very honest, I've used it industry-wide, and I would say that marketresearch.com and Statista are some that you might want to use early on. And then from the customer level, you have MRI and MediMark, which are demographic data, media, consumption, archetype. Okay, and that gets to the customer-specific information. So some furthermore information that you may wish to think about and use, as Mark has talked about, is Statista. And there you can use quotes to get specific. I believe you can still use Boolean logic as well. And ABI Inform, which Mark had shared as well. And this gives you articles, okay? And you have Business Source Premier next list. But you get articles, interviews with CEO and strategy, new product information, market strategy, and customer targets. So, what other ways should we look at data gathering? All right. Now, this is a very, very busy slide, but I want to give you a high-level look at various business databases, and this is both from my colleague Scott Worthage, who is the Vice President at M4 Market Research and a professor at UC Berkeley, also known as a market research guy. And he sort of puts databases in 5 buckets. Competitive intelligence, and as you can see in this exercise that we have, you look at your company press releases. You may want to look for interviews with executives. Emerging products or services, articles, which may ABI, and marketresearch.com. Industry trends, as we talked about beforehand, publications, organizations, wikis can be of help. In general, then you get into using Google Scholar, Wiki, okay, and blogs. And then something that Mark didn't touch on that I find is very useful is using government sources. Particularly, I'm in the science side, so I constantly use PubMed. But the U.S. Census, in terms of getting demographics, is very, very important. But you may find the U.S. Department of Commerce and state and local databases can be very useful as well. So I want to put that out to you. Now, terrible slide. It hits a lot of stuff, and you get very, very granular. But at a high level, okay, there are multiple databases that are what we call popular sources. Publications such as Bloomberg, Business Week, Forbes, Harvard Business Review, Business 2.0, ABI Inform, Lexis. Then there's search engines, as you maybe, and I actually want to point out JSTOR is actually a very useful database and search engine for articles. And then there were web. And if you're in the tech space, you look at TechCrunch, CNET, CIO, okay. Exonomy is, especially with the startup space, both tech and biotech. And then PR Web would give you press releases, etc., and company websites. Okay, so this is really, really high level, and you probably only need this. But if you're making a deeper dive, okay, there are other sources, analyst reports, industry profiles, industry analyses, company lists, demographics, SWOT, company news, industry news, financial competitors, private companies, sector support, and miscellaneous journals. And as you can see, some of these have been repeated from previously. I will point out a few that are, I think, really, really cool to be able to dig in further. First is Factiva. Factiva is really, really cool for industry and company news. Okay. I also think that Simply Map is also for mapping data that's there. sector reports. I've gotten such great stuff from Frost and Sullivan and MarketResearch.com and Mintel, and then JSTOR as well. These are all great resources, but I just try to give you some of my favorites that are here. I know this is a lot of data to be able to process, but at least you have the slides that you can go back, and that's why you also have the cheat sheet. So, should we take the data at face value? And this is an important thing. You know, I'm trained first as a clinician, okay? I started my career as a pharmacist. I worked in clinical. I did clinical research. I was trained not to accept things at face value and to critically look at literature because of the potential biases that exist. And so I impart that also over to each of you in looking at the data that you get, not because it's on the net. And I talk to my wife about this all the time. Well, I saw it on the internet. It was like, so what? In fact, I had Chris Cherry, who is the owner of Via Creek. I had sent him something that had a recap of a discussion with Gary Vaynerchuk, who is one of the thought leaders relative to social media and SEO. He has a new book out, and Chris comes back and he says, I just wouldn't trust the interviewer here. So I think that the point being is that we need to be able to critically evaluate the sources that are coming in and the data that are coming in. So I impart on you in terms of being able to critically evaluate the literature, because again, your business, and you're going to be investing your own time and maybe your own money, maybe family money, and investors will hold you responsible. And that means the data that you collect should be accurate, should be truthful. So and bear in mind that some of the data out there is not verifiable, and some of it is biased. A lot of it's biased. So you need to ask the questions of, what's the purpose? How accurate? How consistent? Do I see it in multiple publications? How credible is the source? Okay? Does the source match up? Like we used the New York Times example in the interview thing for something that's medical. No, I don't. New York Times, oh, hello. I'm looking at New England Journal of Medicine. Was there a methodology? Is it a good methodology? And do you detect any bias there? I hate to say that I'm a little jaded because of the peer review process, because I write for a living as well. But it's important that we have a critical eye, because you never know what slips through and what is taken to as being seen as fact. Okay, so from citations, what I like to do is I want to make sure that when you have slides, and this is critical when you do presentation, because you will be marked off if you don't. All right, so take note here, is that I want to see the sources for your citations. Okay, and those are, if it's article or web or book, there's the format. And location in your PowerPoint should be in the lower bottom left-hand side. Okay, that means in this little corner down here. All right, so I'm going to just show you. This is where I want it. Okay, this is the standard area where most people look at. And just for slide setup, people look for references here. People look for page numbers here. So make it easy on your audience that's there. Okay, and in a report, you can have as a bibliography and have the references in the back, and then you just cite it, and generally with a number that is there based on, but generally we use numbers for citation. So, as Scott says, and Scott is really, I think, one of the best in the business relative to market research. He drives a Harley as well, so he's got to be a pretty cool dude. Your presentation is only as good as the quality of the data, and there's a lot of junk, on the web. So I think, Scott, you said it well. I think to you guys, keep this in mind, that you need to have a critical eye. I would believe the words of somebody who is a vice president of M4 Market Research, especially somebody who's riding a Harley and He owns also a coffee shop and all. He's a pretty cool guy. So if you get into San Carlos, look him up over at his coffee shop. Again, he's the market research guy, and if he says it and he's had 30 years in the business, it means that he probably is a good authoritative source that's there. So anyway, to wrap this up, okay, is understand what your needs are for secondary. Very, very critical. Even in primary, you have secondary. Okay, here we're looking at those 4 pieces. We're looking at market sizing, competitive intelligence, and being able to sort through your competition, look for where there's holes, look if they've done the same thing that you're thinking about, save yourself a little time, get some insights that can give you some background that you don't have to ask questions in your interviews, as well as giving you insights that will allow you to have robust interviews. Okay? You also for SWOT analysis, etc. Get to know the kind of databases, which I've reviewed, and have a strategy. Get smart fast. So industry, company, product, customer. And last but not least is critically evaluate the secondary data that you have. Okay? Anyway, that's what we have here. Hopefully this helps to supplement the information that Mark has shared with you guys. And I'm going to sign off. It's been a great day working with you guys. I think you made a lot of progress. I am excited about your presentations coming up. And again, I will remind you, get with Mark. Go to the Bamboo Shades on the 2nd floor and spend some time. He is truly, there's few people I really just think are just great with what they do. And he is one of them. And I think you guys will get a lot out of his coaching. And you'll do some great work. And you'll be ahead of the curve. So anyway, great evening. Talk to you soon. See you on Monday.